My wife and her ex, 55M, split 15 years ago. He has a daughter, 33F, from a previous relationship, and they have 2 kids together, 24M and 22F. They were secretly in a poly relationship prior to the split. When it came out that the ex's daughter was assaulting their son, my wife took her kids and moved in with the other partner. The ex told everyone my wife was cheating and stole the kids from him, despite this being a lie. My wife's priority was to protect her kids, so she didn't correct the record. She thought things would blow over, but they didn't. He ostracized my wife from her friends and her family. It got to a point where she was no longer invited or welcome to her own family's events, but he was. My wife's brother had been cheated on around that same time, and he and the ex became quick BFFs. The kids ended up believing this, too, and chose to live with their father. His daughter ended up getting imprisoned for a few years for theft, so thankfully she wasn't around. To this day, the ex still tells people that my wife cheated on him. My wife and I have been together for about 10 years, and married for 7. We moved about 3 hours away once the youngest graduated high school. Their daughter now lives with her fiancé. Their son had a baby 2 years. I have invited him to live with us on a number of occasions, but he chooses to live with his father. That side of the family often has out-of-town get-togethers. The ex has a beater that is being held together with masking tape, so my wife will sometimes loan out my car to him without asking me first. She says this is for the good of the children, and it's not fair to them to deny them access. To me, the ex is a shitbag who is still talking poorly about my wife and doesn't deserve any assistance. Additionally, my wife takes trips to see the baby, the first grandchild. She can't stay overnight with her family because her ex blew those relationships up, and she isn't comfortable staying with my cousin, so she stays with them. I do not like this, but she says staying in a hotel is too expensive and she wouldn't stay in it much anyway. It came out in September that the ex has been having an affair with my brother-in-law's wife. This has completely destroyed the relationship the kids have with my wife's family. I can't wrap my mind around how the ex has done so much damage to my wife's reputation only for this to happen. I could barely stomach his presence before, but I can't imagine how I'll react if I see him in person. I feel that these overnight visits that I wasn't ever comfortable with in the first place should be completely off the table now, right along with allowing the car to be used. My wife doesn't agree. She says there isn't another viable solution. She is there right now, having a happy holiday and taking pictures while I'm home alone. We have had a separate Christmas here in our home for the last few years, but that won't be happening this year because they're already together opening presents and breaking bread. I also learned that their son and his fiancée are pregnant again. They both work in the service industry, and I don't imagine they have any intention on moving out of the ex's house. I don't feel heard or respected in my marriage, and I'm not sure what my next steps should be. I do not have any friends in a blended family situation, so I come to you. Reddit. Is there a way to move forward where everyone is happy? As the days turned into weeks, I found myself wrestling with the gnawing sense of imbalance in our marriage. Every time my wife left for one of these visits, I felt more like a placeholder than a partner. My frustration wasn't just about the car, the overnight stays, or even the persistent shadow of her ex. It was about the erosion of our relationship, the silent compromises that had been made without my consent. I decided to confront her when she returned from her most recent trip. It wasn't a holiday anymore, not for me. It was a litany of unanswered questions and unresolved anger. When she walked through the door, still carrying the glow of family moments I wasn't part of, I sat her down. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. She looked at me, a hint of wariness in her eyes. "Okay, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I can't keep doing this. The car, the trips, the overnight stays. It's not about being controlling, but I feel like I'm being asked to support a situation that's eating away at our marriage. Her expression softened, but there was a defensive edge to her posture. "I've told you, this is about the kids. I'm trying to make sure they don't lose their mother entirely. I can't undo what their father has done, but I can try to be present in their lives." "And I get that," I replied, my tone measured. "But at what cost? To me? To us? You're pouring so much into maintaining this fragile connection with them, and it's like there's no room left for our relationship." I'm not saying you should cut ties with them, but there has to be a better way. One that doesn't leave me feeling like an afterthought." She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of understanding. But then she shook her head. "I can't just walk away from them. They're my children. If staying overnight or loaning the car helps me stay in their lives, then I have to do it. I don't expect you to understand, but I need you to trust me." "Trust works both ways," I said, leaning forward. "You're asking me to support something that feels fundamentally unfair. Your ex has done nothing but harm us, and you're still bending over backwards to accommodate him. At what point do we draw the line?" She didn't respond immediately, and the silence between us grew heavy. Finally, she sighed. "I don't know, okay? I don't know where the line is. All I know is that I'm trying to keep what's left of my family from falling apart completely. If that means making sacrifices, then so be it." Her words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they revealed how deeply entrenched she was in this situation. I wanted to argue, to make her see my perspective, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. She was determined to carry this burden, even if it meant straining our marriage to its breaking point. Over the next few days, I tried to process our conversation. I realized that part of my frustration stemmed from feeling powerless. Her decisions, whether it was loaning the car or staying overnight, were made without my input. It wasn't just about the actions themselves. It was about the lack of partnership in those decisions. I started looking into family counseling. I didn't want to give up on our marriage, but I also didn't see a way forward without outside help. When I brought it up to her, she was hesitant at first. "Do you really think we need that?" she asked. "I do," I said. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about how we navigate your relationship with your kids and their father. I think having a neutral third party could help us figure out how to move forward." She eventually agreed, and we scheduled our first session. The counselor, a calm and empathetic woman named Dr. Ellis, immediately created a space where we could both express ourselves without fear of judgment. In that room, I finally felt like my voice was being heard. "It sounds like you both have valid concerns," Dr. Ellis said after we each laid out our perspectives. "The challenge here is finding a balance between maintaining those family ties and respecting the boundaries of your marriage." She encouraged us to set clear boundaries together, ones that we could both agree on. It wasn't an easy process. My wife struggled with the idea of saying no to her kids, and I grappled with my own resentment toward her ex. But slowly, we began to find common ground. One of the first compromises we made was about the car. My wife agreed to consult me before loaning it out again. We also decided that overnight stays would be limited to emergencies, and she would look into more affordable hotel options for her visits. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. The bigger issue, her ex and his ongoing influence, was harder to tackle. Dr. Ellis helped us draft a letter to her children, explaining her side of the story in a way that was honest but not accusatory. It was a way for her to reclaim her narrative without directly attacking their father. Sending that letter was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. She worried about how they would react, whether it would drive them further away. But to her surprise, her son called a few days later. "Mom, I had no idea," he said. "Why didn't you tell us this sooner?" "I didn't want to put you in the middle," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I realize now that staying silent only made things worse." It wasn't an instant fix. Her children were still navigating years of misinformation and divided loyalties. But it was a step toward healing, one that gave us both a renewed sense of hope. As for me, I'm learning to let go of some of my anger. It's not easy, especially when her ex continues to lurk on the edges of our lives. But I'm trying to focus on what we're building together, rather than the wreckage he left behind. Our marriage isn't perfect, and it probably never will be. But we're working on it, piece by piece. And for now, that's enough.